Tonight I have two very interesting guests with me. John Seed, who is an ecological activist from Australia. Good evening, John.
Hi, John.
And Ralph Metzner, who is a Bay Area resident who is involved in developing a green psychology and helping us redefine some of our assumptions about what the Earth and its consciousness is all about. Ralph, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this work.
Well, I'm a psychologist, and my interest in has really been consciousness and all the states of consciousness for many years. And I had a strong interest in comparative studies, cross-cultural studies, and this kind of thing. And over the last several years, along with many other people all over the world, I've become aware that that human consciousness is in a condition of profound alienation from the natural environment of which we are, in fact, in biological, ecological fact, an interdependent part. So, but this is a dissociation, an alienation that is so profound that most people don't even think of it. But I've become very interested in pursuing really what are the historical roots of that, and how did that come about? Because along with many other people observing the environmental and ecological crisis, I feel that at root this crisis is really a crisis of perception and has to do with consciousness, how we experience ourselves, how we think of ourselves, who we really are as human beings. We're confronted with this fact of that through our technological industrial system, we're shredding really the very fabric of life on which we depend. And how could this be? Who are we as human beings? What kind of beings are we that this could happen to us? And we see this destruction going on, this extinction of species, irreversible extinction of species, this tremendous loss of biodiversity, pollution and impoverishment of our natural environment. And we all agree it's a terrible thing, and we don't seem to be able to stop it. It's like that looks very much like a psychological problem. It looks like an addiction, a compulsion addiction, self-destructive behavior that you can't stop. And so I'm interested in the psychological aspects of that. How did that come to be? How could it change? So I'm interested in, philosophers have argued for many years that we need to re-examine the philosophical basis of our conception of the world, our worldview.
And one of those is that man is here to conquer nature and to live off the earth as high a living standard as he can have.
Right. Yes, that human beings, humanism is a very interesting notion. Humanism is thought of as being sort of one of the crown jewels of Western culture. The appreciation of the human and its glory. And you have these wonderful lines of Shakespeare. What a piece of work is man. How noble in his features and all this kind of thing. And when you examine what does humanism really mean? Now in essence it means so you appreciate the human value. It arose as a philosophical psychological movement in reaction to the domination of a religious worldview where everything important in life that existed really was handed down by priestly authorities, churchly authorities, and they told us what was the truth, and human beings were basically had no value at all and had to just follow the dictates of the church and so forth. So the humanist movement, along with the rationalist movement and the scientific movement, arose really out of a reaction against sort of inhumane, some of the inhuman features of the Middle Ages. But when you look at it in more detail, the way it has evolved, and humanism is really implies that the human species is superior to all other forms of life. It's a superiority complex. And along with that assumption of superiority, which is biologically false, we're not superior to other human beings.
And we're not superior to other species, you're saying also.
We're not superior to other species, and except in particular functions. We might have, so we have the big brain, but other species of animals, for example, have higher perceptual qualities and greater strength and greater size.
And other species like dolphins and whales have bigger brains.
Even bigger brains, which we don't know what they're doing with, So there are hidden value assumptions that creep in there, and that say we're superior to other species, and that superiority gives us the right to use and exploit and dominate and control these other life forms as we wish for our use and for our benefit. And that sort of value judgment has religious backing, because in the book of Genesis it says, go forth and multiply and subdue the earth and its creatures, thou shalt have dominion over it. And people have tried to reinterpret that and said, well, that's not really what he meant. He didn't mean dominate, he meant be stewards, But in fact, that's the way it's been taken.
God didn't mean dominate, God meant be a steward.
So when you realize that humanism really means assumed superiority along with right to use and abuse, then you realize that humanism is really analogous to racism,
aggression,
and sexism. Exactly, analogous. Racism and sexism says that is the implicit or explicit assumption that one race or one sex is superior to the other, and therefore has the right to use, dominate, and control the other as it sees fit. So I am very interested in the psychological and philosophical aspects and religious aspects and spiritual aspects. How did it come to be that we have adopted an ideology that is leading us to self-destruct our own species, and that vast portions of the biosphere along with us? And how can that be changed? How can we get off this machine that is hurtling towards an abyss in time and somehow find the means to stop it? Well, I'm also very interested in education, and John and I are doing a workshop together, and we've talked a lot about what does it take, what is really needed to help people awaken to this and to give them the sense of empowerment that they can make a difference.
Well, that's the question you took out of my mouth. What are some of the things that you are doing and that people can do to help awaken a sense of the true place of human beings in the scheme of things?
Yeah.
John, I know that you feel strongly about this also. You don't see human beings as at the top of some pyramid, but as part of a complex of thousands and millions of species, correct?
Yeah, I think that a web is a much better analogy for our place in things, because then with a web, no strand in a web is any more important than any other strand, and in fact all the strands are necessary to hold the web together, that if we destroy the other species, then we destroy the matrix within which we two exist.
Simply and beautifully put. Where's the spider come in? Who's the spider in that system?
Well, there's so much we don't know, I mean, ecology is an amazing science. It's been called the subversive science because it's opposite to every other science. Every other science works by increased specializations, dividing nature, the world, the cosmos up into smaller and smaller, narrow and narrow specializations, and not really looking at the interrelationships. Ecology is the science of interrelationships, how things hang together. Even the Gaia theory itself, the theory that the Earth is like a giant living organism, was proposed first by Jim Lovelock, who's an atmosphere chemist, and by Lynn Margulis, who's a microbiologist, which normally these two sciences don't have anything to say to each other. But in the Gaia theory, it really says everything is interconnected in ways that we don't really fully understand, really at all. And so this view of the world as an interconnected web is a radical pioneering formulation in science. It's right at the borderland of science, and yet it fits with ancient traditions. The ancient traditions, ancient spiritual traditions of Buddhism and Hinduism, and ancient mystical traditions, and also the shamanic, animistic, archaic religions. All have a view in which human beings are seen as interconnected, interdependent parts of a vast network of living beings, a vast tree, as some stated, usually using organic metaphors. The world itself is compared to an animal, a maternal, the idea of the Mother Earth, or the Grandmother Earth, as Native Americans often say it, is the idea that the Earth is like a living being who brings forth all life out of her own body, just like a mammalian mother does, and also not only gives birth, but also then all beings go back into her body at death. If we had a worldview like that, instead of the worldview that we've inherited from science, which is a mechanistic worldview, where the world is seen as a great machine, basically non-sentient, not having any feelings and not having any consciousness, which makes it possible for us to do the kind of exploitation and destruction and pollution that we're doing. If you had a worldview that the Earth is living and sentient and being and alive, and not only that, is actually a divine being, a god or a goddess, for starters, we wouldn't be doing a lot of these things. And then it turns out that traditional Native Americans, Aboriginals in all parts of the world, have been saying just that for a long time, and have been saying, you guys, you are really blowing it. Will you wake up? Will you stop doing what you're doing? We're not supposed to destroy our Earth. She's our mother, and so forth. And our people say, well, that's just stupid anthropomorphizing. I say it's anthropomorphizing. You're projecting human qualities onto the Earth. Well, what now philosophers are saying, what science does is mechanomorphizing. It's projecting machine qualities onto the Earth. And it's actually, when you think about it, much more likely that the Earth is like a human being, or like an animal, a mammal, or any kind of an animal, than it is to be like a machine. Because after all, machines are created by men. They're not made by God, and the Earth is, and human beings and animals are made by God or Goddess.
And we all know that plants breathe.
We all know that plants breathe, and they all need water.
Yep.
And life is autopoietic, what they call autopoiesis, which generates itself out of itself. Now, no machine does that. No machine does that, and no machine has ever been made that does that. Like Thomas Berry often says, we can't even make a single blade of grass. We can make what a single blade of grass does. That self-generating, self-perpetuating quality that's totally sensitive to all its interconnections with everything else is something that totally escapes us. And yet we, in our arrogance, what people have called the humanist arrogance, the arrogance of humanism, say, well, this is, the Earth exists for man, was created for man, for his enjoyment and use and abuse and exploitation, and if something goes wrong, we can fix it. That's another part of that tremendous arrogance. Technology will solve all our problems, and especially the ones created by technology. We'll just have more technology, and that'll solve it. Don't worry, it'll be okay.
I know in my work with interspecies communication with whales and dolphins that I've come to experience in my contact with the whales that they feel the Earth as God's body. That's what they've taught me. The Earth is God's body.
That's right.
It absolutely is. We live in, come from God's body.
Right. We live in the Earth. That's another good way of putting it. See, we're in the Earth. We're not on the Earth with an environment around us. I don't even like to talk about environment anymore, because the word environment is very dualistic. It implies there's an agent, a being, an agent, and there's the environment that surrounds him or her, which means that there's it's a sort of a separative thing. Whereas ecology is actually a much better term, because it deals with relationships. Everything is interrelated. So we're going to see, and we are seeing, eco-philosophy. Mm-hmm. We're seeing eco-psychology. We're seeing eco-economics, which already should be, actually economics should be, but isn't, based on ecology, as the word itself tells us. And we're going to have eco-spirituality, and all of which is could also be described as a greening of these ways of knowledge, ways of looking at the world.
John, I know that you have developed some things. We'll be talking next week with you about your involvement with the businesses and going in this direction, but you created something called the Council of All Beings with Joanna Macy in response to some of this. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things, as I was working on my forest issues, and I realised that for every forest that we saved, 100 others would disappear at the same time, and that there was no way of saving the forests one forest at a time, and there was no way of saving the earth one issue at a time either, because the forests, of course, weren't the only issue. And I began looking for the underlying spiritual disease that allows us to destroy the very... It's like a leaf destroying the tree on which itself is growing, deluded into thinking that somehow it can be in its self-interest to do so, you know. So where was our mistake coming from? And I came to very much the same conclusions as Ralph just mentioned as to the source of these mistaken ideas in the kind of foolish creation myths of our own superiority and domination that we've been following. But I was looking for ways to heal that mistake, and one of the things that I realised was that we are the first culture in the history of the earth probably to have, in our arrogance once again, dispensed with the ceremonies and rituals by which all other peoples have always acknowledged and nourished that sense of interconnectedness with the earth. That you look at the most
and nourish
so-called
themselves.
Yeah, exactly, in doing so, because that is their very selves that they're nourishing by doing so. And so I began to experiment with Joanna in seeing how difficult it was to find ceremonies and rituals that felt relevant to these times and to our modern civilized cultures, and found that it wasn't at all difficult to for people to re-experience these kind of things, because after all, we've been performing these ceremonies for probably hundreds of thousands of years, and it's only in the last few hundred years that we, since our so-called, age of enlightenment, that we've decided that we will call these things superstition or mumbo-jumbo, and that we'll dispense with them. And of course now we see the result of that we are so divorced from our true nature and our true sense of interbeing, interconnectedness with the rest of the Earth family, that we are destroying ourselves, that we're destroying our own nest in this way. So in the Council of All Beings, we learn to re-experience that sense of participation in the world, that sense of interconnectedness that we lost, and to our surprise we discover that it's not at all difficult, that it's still very, very close to us.
So you create a circle, and it's a ritualistic...
Well, after we create a safe situation by different techniques, we create a feeling of trust among ourselves, among the participants, and then we start to extend our identity into nature. Firstly, we might do an evolutionary remembering, where we start to look back at the path that we've taken. After all, when we were inside our mother's womb, we grew a vestigial tail, we grew gills. There are many, many signs on our body of where we've come from. This opposable thumb that probably came from swinging through trees a long time ago. The composition of our blood, so similar to the composition of the seawater out of which we emerged about 400 million years ago. All of these signs, but we experience these in ritual form, not as merely a scientific fact, which of course they are, but also as a very personal, psychological, and dare I say, spiritual fact of our existence that we have deliberately blocked out in our culture. We've put up these conceptual filters where we say, I am just this body here, and I don't extend beyond that. But like I say, just hold your breath for a couple of minutes and you'll see what you're actually composed of, or try and do without water for a little while. We're constantly taking the environment into our bodies. We're breathing it in and out. We're taking in the earth through the food that we eat, and we're part of all of these cycles. It's not enough to know this. We have to actually experience this, and this is the role of ritual. This is the role of ceremony. This is where our values change. This is where we can change in very deep levels of our personality. We're not going to be able to think our way out of this. Of course, whatever we do has to be congruent with our thoughts, but our thoughts aren't enough. We have to engage our feelings. We have to engage the very depths of our personality, and that's what the Council of All Beings does. And in the end, we discover that we're capable of sharing of offering our voice to the voice of some other being. There are many beings on the earth that have no voice in our parliaments, in our councils, and so we offer our voice and we speak for wolf, we speak for whale, and we hear what's happening to the world through their eyes, and we offer our voice to them, and it's an incredible shock to us to be in a circle like this. At first we may think, oh, this is just a projection, this is just psychodrama or something like this, but very quickly we discover that we're hearing things that we've never heard before, and they have an incredible ring of truth about them. So we can really become transformed through this kind of an experience, and in that transformation the change is effortless. We don't have to struggle to remember to take our plastic bags back to the supermarket, as a kind of, we can't just through our will do this. We have to allow the change to take place very deep within our being, and the Council of All Beings is one such way.
You and Ralph are going to be doing a presentation, a workshop this weekend on the 26th on Sunday.
The council form, is a very ancient form. People, as long as we've been human beings, we've sat down together on the earth in circles, sometimes around a fire or sometimes around just without a fire in the center, and told stories and discussed our findings, our problems, the situations we find. And the idea of council, which I've also used in my work in just where people, not necessarily as the Council of All Beings, but just where people are sitting and talking with each other. And Native Americans have a wonderful tradition of what they call the talking staff or the talking stick. And they use this in all kinds of ceremonies. They use it in religious ceremonies, such as the Native American Church. They use it in political council meetings.
Well, in the men's movement, that's been
the men's
integrated
movement has started to do
very
it
much.
Right.
Obviously,
and, where staff is held, and sometimes even standing meetings. The staff serves to draw attention to the speaker. The speaker who has the staff has the attention and the receptivity of the others, and there's respect given. So it's not a debate.
You have the stick right now. How do you like to lead people through a little bit of a meditation?
Is that we should do that now? Are we to the end of the thing? Okay. Well, so if you would just like to center yourself a little bit, and one of the best ways to center yourself. Centering and grounding are kind of basic aspects of meditation. And one of the best ways to center yourself is to become aware of the fact that you have a central vertical axis that goes through your body, which runs vertically down through your body from above your head down, following the line of your body, centered from left to right and centered from front to back, down into the ground beneath your feet. And just sense that and feel your spine, which is aligned more or less with this central vertical axis. And feel the difference, if any, or feel the way the right side and the left side of your body feel. These left and right side of your body are associated in ancient traditions with sun and moon energy, yin and yang energy, male and female energy, ingoing and outgoing energy. And feel, if you can, the balance between these two. And feel your breath going in and out. Become aware of your breath and the oxygen that you breathe going down into all parts of your body, going right down into the tips of your fingers and down to the tips of your toes, and feel the earth beneath your feet. Feel the interchange of energy between your body and the earth. Become aware of the room that you're in, and let your awareness expand out into the whole building, through the whole building, and the place where you are, the city of San Francisco or wherever you may be. This is a particular place on the earth, on this planet Earth. And in ancient times, the inhabitants would have said, there is a spirit of this place. This city, this whole bay area, as we call it, has a certain spirit, a certain intelligence, a certain numinous quality that we can contact, that we can experience. We may not be able to talk to it in English, but we can feel it. And out to the west is the great Pacific Ocean, the great peacemaking ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the great ocean mother that is the source of an origin of all life, that has the power to dissolve differences, to dissolve hardened crystallizations of thoughts and defenses. So experience the power of that great Western ocean spirit mother, matrix. And experience the power of the East. The power of the East is the power of the rising sun, which is there regardless of whether it's morning, day, or noon. It's that direction is the direction from which new light and new growth and everything like that comes.
Thank you, Ralph. That was wonderful. Well, folks, we hope that you will take this to heart and come into yourself and deepen your connection with nature and find within yourself a place to go out there and make a difference in the world. Thank you for joining us here on Link Up for Transformation. Next week we're going to have our guest, John Seed, talking about the rainforest, and then the week after that we'll be having an interview with Helen Caldecott, another Aussie from down under, talking about if you love this planet, what you can do about it. Thanks again. I'm John McLean. We're Link Up for Transformation, and we're signing off.